encore cette action.
Calm yourself down for the moment, Max.
Yeah, made massive floor damage. J'ai des dommages sur mon fond plat.
Sous la pression de Daniel Ricciardo. Oui, c'était pas simple.
Obviously, Ferrari's tyre choice didn't look like it worked out in the end. These guys looked very strong at the beginning, certainly Max on the super soft. Do you think that was wrong?
Blood, sweat and tears. Something that's more commonly known for someone that is really dedicated to something. And that's what you saw at the Brazilian Grand Prix. Well, you nearly saw blood, sweat and tears from the Brazilian Grand Prix, or in the aftermath, after Max Verstappen drove a superbly brilliant, excellent, legendary, whatever you want to call it, drive, and it was shot down by Esteban Ocon. Well, at least that's what some people think. So obviously, you probably gather as to what today's debate is going to be about. It's obviously about the Turn 2 incident between Max Verstappen and Esteban Ocon, and trust me guys, this is probably one of the most, talked about topic of the season. It has been quite a quiet season in terms of controversial things. Like, when about this time, it's normally like, oh, how's this driver going to do for next season? Like, when he's transferred into his new car, like we're seeing when Brandon Hartley came into Toro Rosso, when Carlos Sainz came into Renault, excuse me, obviously when Gasly came in, we were like, oh, okay, how are they going to end the season, and how are they going to go forth in the next? We haven't got that this season. Nobody's changed teams. So good luck, well, thank you, or should I say, to Esteban Ocon for giving us this drama and actually something to end the season on. So, if you didn't watch the race and you just haven't been bothering watching, like keeping up with the news, and you don't know what's going on, then stay. Don't go anywhere, right? So obviously going to turn 1, Max Verstappen is leading the Grand Prix by a country mile. He's going to win the race, no problem whatsoever. Like, unless the car breaks down. But there was no way that was going to happen. Behind him was Esteban Ocon, who Verstappen had just lapped, just previously. Ocon had pitted 2 laps earlier for a set of the super soft tyres, the Red Bull tyres. Max Verstappen at the time was on soft tyres, which was the medium range compound at the time of the race. So obviously Max was on the medium set of tyres and Esteban Ocon was on the faster set of tyres. So obviously Ocon had grippier, faster and better tyres than Max. Now the rules state that you are allowed to unlap yourself. So that's what Esteban Ocon was instructed to do. He was behind Max Verstappen going across the start finisher, going to turn 1 on the outside, comes into turn 2, halfway through the centre S, and contact. Esteban Ocon in P15 takes out race leader Max Verstappen. All hell breaks loose. Max Verstappen on the radio, effing him blind, beep, giving him this, giving him that, gives him a little cheeky wave, if you want to call it that, to Esteban Ocon as he's facing the wrong way, drives off, little damage on his car. It's excuse me, everything's fine, everything's hunky-dory, drives on, but obviously the car was never the same, and he loses the race in P2. Now, before we dwell on, let's just talk about that incident at turn 2. Whose fault was it? Well, for me, in my opinion, just a racing incident. That's how I've seen it. However, I would probably put the blame a little bit on Esteban Ocon. Now, the reason why is because, obviously, yes, the rules state that you are allowed to unlap yourself. Now, in Esteban Ocon's race interview, or his post-race interview, he stated that, well, I am allowed to do that. I was instructed to do that. I was faster than him. You know, I've done that on other drivers before. I did it to Max and I crashed. However, I thought Esteban Ocon was too aggressive for the situation that it was in. Now, what I mean by that is obviously, as I said before, he was already lapped. He was going to unlap himself. There was no surreal gain for Ocon if he did get past him other than to unlap himself. But let's be realistic. He wasn't going to score any points and he wasn't going to win the race. So why go for it, I would say, and as if he was going to go for the race lead, if you would say. Like, he moved as if he wanted the race win. He wanted to go, like, as if he was going to overtake Max Verstappen to lead the race. He went in, I would say, too aggressive. He could have backed off. He could have waited until the next corner, or even in the straight line. If it was faster than him in the straight, then obviously there was the next straight after turn 3. He could have overtook him there, or you could just have simply left it for another time. Backed off. There was no reason for Esteban Ocon to do so, and obviously, yes, and that's obviously why I would probably put a little bit of the blame onto him. But obviously on the flip side, Verstappen should have been more aware as to where Esteban Ocon was. He could see he was faster, he was aware he was faster, he should have been more aware as to what Ocon would do. And if you are going to be in those situations, especially when you're going to be at the front quite a lot where Verstappen wants to be, you're going to have to be aware of backmarkers like Esteban Ocon, like what he was doing. Obviously, you are going to have to be aware that drivers like that will be a bit too aggressive, which they shouldn't be, but that's how it is. Verstappen can't prevent that. So Verstappen should have been more aware. Then again, like he probably knew he was there. You could see in the mirrors. However, he probably more than likely he was probably too aggressive on his part and kind of okay, I'll try and scare him out the way because like what's he doing? He's probably annoyed, going, well, why is he battling me now? Like I just want to get on and win the race. Like he's going to hold me up. He could cause me a problem. He could crash. Obviously beforehand, and obviously the inevitable happens essentially. So I would probably, as I said, more so the blame towards Ocon in that sense, only because the situation it was in. However, if it was for position, I would just say, okay, Verstappen wasn't aware of where he was. Ocon was, I would say it was a bit too aggressive, but that's racing. You just get on with it. But obviously Ocon, I thought, was way too. He was just too committed to what. Obviously, you know what I mean. Like you know what I mean. Like obviously, he went in. As I said, he went into turn 2 too aggressively. He shouldn't have done. There was no surreal gain, as I said. So obviously, both cars spin out, and Verstappen is not a happy Dutchman. So Lyle, well, that's kind of like the first part of all this debate. So Lyle, bringing you into this, excuse me again. Who would you pinpoint the blame? Let's talk about it from your perspective. Who would you point the finger at in terms of blame for that turn 2 incident?
Well, obviously, as you said, it's just a racing incident to start with. Obviously, it was just a very stupid move by Verstappen. It was a stupid move by Ocon. Now, okay, so get ready for this. Obviously, my favourite driver in Formula 1 is obviously Max Verstappen. When I went to Singapore, I was supporting him and things like that. Obviously, I think he's a great guy. He's near enough my age as well. Now, obviously, you'd be expecting me to say Esteban Ocon is at fault, wouldn't you? But I'm not.
Yes, I would.
No, I'm going to say Max Verstappen, Jordan. I'm going to say Max Verstappen. The only reason I'm saying that, okay, right. So we'll evaluate it from like the points that I'm going to bring up from what I see, what I saw. So originally I did think it was Esteban Ocon that was at fault. Obviously, the F1 has released basically a longer video that they've just shared about a few days after the Brazilian Grand Prix, which obviously didn't just show the incident, but showed about a few laps beforehand that, like Jordan has said, Esteban had pitted. Obviously, Max had stayed out. Esteban was lapped by Verstappen, but he was catching him very, very marginally, but he was gaining, he was gaining along the home straight, obviously going downhill into the centre rest, which, to be honest, was obviously a great overtaking spot. That was probably one of the best plays, and I'll tell you something, any fan that was sitting at the centre rest, the start of the centre rest, that's the best part, because all the overtakes happen right there. So obviously Esteban was marginally gaining Verstappen. He had a go, and obviously, like John said, you are allowed to unlap yourself. The team had even said, Esteban, unlap yourself. That's obviously what he brought up afterwards as well. Now, obviously, on the onboard footage as well, Esteban goes on the outside of Max. Obviously, Max takes the racing line around the centre S's. Esteban goes on the outside. Now, obviously, heading into the second part of the S's, just before you go out onto the second straight, the back straight, Esteban is on the inside. Now, his inside wheel is on that curb. It's a fantastic line. It's very much the racing line. Basically, him and Max, it was really a Senna and a Prost Suzuka 1989 incident, and obviously then it escalated and that something was going to happen. But obviously it wasn't for the lead, it was for, well, nothing really. Esteban would have unlapped himself, but to be honest though, Esteban would have unlapped himself, but then Max probably would have lapped him again very, very soon. That was the only thing. So obviously in this incident, what actually happened, okay, so obviously Esteban was on the inside, Max then just cut him off. Now Esteban would have no space whatsoever. The only option for him was to see him do this, have unbelievable reaction times, and just drive over the curb, have all four wheels off the track. He might get in trouble by the FIA a little bit, or, he would have to have done something very stupid for that. But he was still racing, he was on the inside, and even if it's not you're a lap car, you have no position. A bit like what John said, when he said about Max trying to scare him. Even if it was Esteban, you're a lap car, just get the hell out of the race. It's my race. It's almost like once you're lapped, no one cares about you. He was still in the race. He was still a car. He's still a driver. It's still a constructor in at the end of the day, and he still could have scored points. So him being on the inside as a car, as a driver, it still was a very stupid move to cut him off. If they were fighting for position, it still would have been just a very, very stupid move by both of them. Both of them would have been aggressive. Both of them would have been penalised, or none of them would have been penalised. The FIA would have looked and said, it's nobody's fault, it's a racing incident. They were both aggressive. We either punish them both or we punish none of them. It would have been a racing incident. They were both being aggressive, a bit like what happened at Suzuka. Now, obviously, in this incident, Max was leading the race. He was going aggressive. So that was understandable. You're leading the race. You're the Red Bull. You're not the fastest car out there. I mean, he was fast in Brazil, but obviously Mercedes, of course, are fast at every circuit. They love Brazil. They love every circuit. They were going for 5. Lewis had just won 5 for himself. He was going for 5 with the team, so he had everything to gain. Lewis was catching Max. Max needed to get a gap. He needed to go for it. Esteban was unlapping himself. When you think about who's got more to lose, Max had more to lose. He didn't expect Esteban to go on the inside, but when he saw Esteban, if he deviated off the racing line, he might have gone on the marble for a little bit, got a poor exit onto the back straight, but he's still in a Red Bull. It would have been a Red Bull with no damaged floor, no damaged front wing, tyres still in order, everything fine. He might have lost 110th. He might have lost a little bit of time. Obviously, as a racing driver, you don't want to lose any time. He might have lost a bit of time. But what's more important, Max, is it losing like 100th millisecond or 1/10 of a second by doing this, by seeing Esteban there, again having good reaction times, and then going off into the marbles or whatever, or crashing with him, spinning off, and then he must have lost about 0.6 of a second, maybe maybe a few seconds even, spinning round. He had a bit of floor damage. Obviously, he was still in the race, finished second, but he had floor damage and he had a bit of front wing damage, which could have led to obviously a retirement or something even worse. So obviously, the team would have definitely hated. It was a stupid move by Esteban. He wanted to unlap himself. But who's got more to lose? And Max had more to lose. He had the race win. He lost the race win there. Yeah. It was his fault, and he blames Esteban, but I think it was only his reaction because he was blaming Esteban. You have to blame someone. You have to say it's not my fault. It's your fault that I haven't won. But at the end of the day, I think Max losing the lead was not helped by Esteban. But you're only in charge of your own actions. Obviously, that's something that your parents will always tell you. No one makes you do something. I sound like an old woman there. But no one makes you do anything you don't. No one makes you do something. Esteban didn't make Max crash. Max made himself crash, if that makes sense. Max took himself out. Esteban didn't help the situation, but Max could have really deviated from that. He had more to lose. Gilles Villeneuve said that as well. Max had more to lose. And, that's why I think Max was at fault. It was a racing incident.
Hamilton said that, didn't he?
Yeah.
Just after the podium, obviously the camera went in, and then obviously Max was obviously complaining at the time, and then Hamilton went, well, he had nothing to lose, like, you are allowed to unlap yourself. Yeah. Or it was almost like on Ocon's defence, which obviously you would be, because Ocon's part of the Mercedes programme, isn't he? Yeah. But obviously I can see where Hamilton's coming from. It's like, Ocon had nothing to lose. Verstappen had a race win to lose. Yeah. So obviously, is that pretty much what like you're saying now? Like obviously Verstappen, there should be more blame. Obviously, should be more blame on Verstappen.
And that ties into that ties into what we're going to go on to next. Obviously, like the second part, so like how Max takes the situation. But just quickly on this, Max had more to lose. It was Max's fault, this incident, and he lost the lead. It wasn't much to lose from Esteban's side. It was loads to lose from Max's side, and he took himself out. And all this anger, a lot of it he must have felt about himself, but obviously he couldn't be angry at himself. As Sebastian Vettel has said many times, you're a racing driver. You have to blame something. You have to, and then obviously that leads on to the second part. Obviously, what we're going to talk about. Obviously, the second part of why this is like a massive thing, and I think John was about to mention it. Was obviously Max Verstappen kicking off afterwards. So I'll just run through what happened there. Obviously, finished the race. Max second, which by the way I still think it was a fantastic finish for them. I think the most exciting thing to finish with was obviously Raikkonen and Ricciardo. Obviously, who would take third place? I was really hoping it would be Ricciardo. I mean, that is the best. That would be a great finish for him. Obviously, 2 Red Bulls on the podium as well would be fantastic. But obviously, it was the Iceman who took the final position. Obviously, Max Verstappen came across the line, second place. And then the Red Bull team radio came on and said, mate, I don't know what to say. He went, I know what to say. I hope that I don't see Esteban in the paddock. Then obviously loads of stars and, you can't understand Dutch words. Yes, obviously crossed the line, came in, obviously did the very obligatory thing what an F1 driver does, Jordan, and that is to crash into the sign. I'd say second place. It wasn't as bad as
if you're an annoyed racer, you just bang into the barrier. If you do that, either you're too happy and you don't even think about where to stop, or you're too angry and you've got to show emotion by banging them poor bollards. Justice for the bollards.
The best one,
them poor bollards.
The best one was Monaco 2016, I want to say, when Lewis Hamilton lost the win to Nico Rosberg, obviously with Mercedes mucking up the strategy. That was the best one. He sent that absolutely flying. But yeah, it has been absolutely loads. Max did that in Mexico as well for qualifying, obviously when he lost it to Daniel. Max hit it a little bit, it stumbled, knocked it over, but the best thing about that, he knocked it over. The guy in front of him, okay, I'm acting it out here, you have to watch me, acting it out. Guy in front of him, the guy with the white, the FIA worker, thumbs up, yeah, it's good, Max is good. Behind him, Lewis Hamilton jumps on his Mercedes crew to celebrate. They pulled down the Heineken barrier. Honestly, that was probably and then he turns around,
a flood of Mercedes people,
and then he turns the best thing is he turns around and he's like what? Like he turns, so he's like, yeah, good job, Max, like for stopping.
First the scales, now the barriers.
You come on, you're breaking. Oh, Brazil's a big hefty fine, guys. Big hefty fine. The scale, purify you. They've got a lot of forking out to do. But anyway, so crashed into the sign. Went up with the driver's debrief. This was what we're seeing on the telly. Obviously, went up the driver's debrief. Then, as Jordan said, he says to Lewis Hamilton, he says to Kimi Räikkönen, or he says to Kimi first, and Lewis joins in. He says, Kimi says, what happened to you? Max then says, Esteban took us out.
Did you win the race?
Agree with me, guys. Like, it was almost like he needed, them to agree with him.
Be on my team.
And then obviously Lewis came out with the, as John said, the you are allowed to unlap yourself, which obviously is very, very true. And obviously he wasn't supporting Esteban. He wasn't supposed to be supporting Max. He was just saying, what is to happen. Obviously, anyone would unlap themselves. Nobody's going to just, sit back. If you don't take a risk, as Ayrton Senna said, once very famously said, if you don't take risks, you're no longer a racing driver. It's not a risk to unlap yourself, but it's an opportunity. It's like that closing window. It's like that thing. It's like a portal in the Matrix. It's like it's closing rapidly. If you don't take it, it's like now or never. If you don't take the opportunity, it's going. And Esteban, okay, fine. He could have waited about another half a lap, but he's versing a Red Bull. He wants to unlap himself, but he's versing a Red Bull. It was a very much now or never moment for Esteban to unlap himself. And as a racing driver, as someone who's skilled, he's 20, 21 years old from France. Obviously, Racing Point Force obviously been through absolutely hell this year. And he's fighting. He sees an opportunity. He sees a window, and he's going to go for it. So, he has taken that gap. And obviously then Lewis Hamilton, the 5-time world champion, who, by the way, obviously most experienced guy on the grid, he knows what he's talking about. So he agrees with Esteban, or he doesn't agree, but he kind of doesn't agree with what Max is saying, which is, Esteban shouldn't have done that. He's a bad French guy. He's done right. He should be able to unlap himself. They went out on the podium. Celebrations were going on. Obviously, Max lifts the podium, lifts a trophy. Even if you lift the podium, that would be very impressive. And then obviously the celebrations come on. Obviously in Brazil, it's not the normal. Obviously they do a lot of samba music. The Brazilian girls got dancing. They even asked Lewis Hamilton to join in, which I thought was hilarious. Apparently they asked Kimi to join in as well, and then apparently he was like, yeah, I'm partying, but he just sat back, like he normally does. And then Max storms off the podium. He comes back on to get photos, which I assume that he's gone into the debriefing room, being told off by someone. Get out there, Max. What are you doing? You can't come back in here. Get back out there. He's done wrong. Max is dead done wrong for that. Goes back out there and obviously then gets some photos taken. So obviously, firstly, I just want to mention Max's behaviour on the podium. Now, obviously, I saw that, Jordan. Firstly, I saw that Max just storms off completely. David Croft just said it's so, laid back. Max has just left the podium. He doesn't want to join in with the celebrations, and you just think, oh my god, how childish can you be? Like for example, you remember Multi 21? That Multi 21, that little incident that happened a few years ago. Yeah, do you remember multi-21? Yeah.
I do.
Vaguely. If you don't, guys, it's a very minor story, but it's very
too
important. Yes, too young. That was when Sebastian Vettel was actually good. No, I'm joking. Don't hate me, Seb fans. So Mark Webber, obviously, he was completely peeved off, but he stayed on the podium. Max didn't. He was not staying around for that. He was not happy. So he stayed on the podium. My view of that, John, was childish. Very, very childish.
Yeah,
whatever's happened, like Mark Webber and Multi-21, whatever's happened, just suck it up. Just be on the podium and celebrate. Spray some champagne, drink some champagne. Spray Lewis, because they've won. Congratulations to him. Do something. Do a bit of sambering. Just don't storm off. And then also as well. He came back on again and made a bit of a fool of himself because it was like, I'm storming off. I mean, you must have seen that before, like where someone will storm off making a point. And it's like, I forgot my bag. It's like you have to come back on again. It just doesn't work, does it? So I mean, I thought that was childish. I thought that was childish, Jordan, on the podium. I mean, when you saw that on the podium, what did you think when you saw Max storm off? What did you think when you saw that?
I was just like, if you think about it, right? Yes, you have lost the race lead, but you've drove in a race that everyone wrote you off at. Max Verstappen wrote himself off at the start of the race. He said that he wasn't going to have any. There was going to be no race win or anything like that. He didn't expect his car to be good. Bear in mind, guys, that they were already sort of a step ahead of the rest of the grid because in qualifying they'd written themselves off and they were putting up the race setup already. So therefore they were able to they had a little bit of an advantage over the rest of the teams. Now, when I heard this, I had a funny feeling that Red Bull would have a good race. Obviously, not as good as what I thought they were going to have. So, obviously, Red Bull in a P2, that's still pretty impressive. Bear in mind, he finished ahead of Valtteri Bottas and Sebastian Vettel, who obviously are regular podium contenders. Of course they are. And against Kimi Räikkönen, who obviously, again, is finished on the podium, 7, 8 times this season, or maybe more, I'm not too sure. But, obviously, he's still done pretty well. But the incident that I want to talk about is the parc fermé situation, where obviously Verstappen comes in, pushing and shoving Esteban Ocon. I mean, there's just so many opinions about this, guys. There's so much you can say. Obviously, I'm not going to go into great detail about what happened. Obviously, it's all over social media. You should know about it. You should know about it by now. But there was a guy. I think it was on Twitter. I was having a conversation about him with, and he was just basically saying that everyone is just being overreactive about what Verstappen's doing. But and he's like, oh, but you see this in football all the time. But you can't really compare one sport aggression to another, because that's like comparing rugby aggression to golf. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if a golf player kicks off, you can't say like, oh, I say it in rugby. It's like, well, golf is a totally different sport. It's a calm, natural sport. Same in Formula 1. Like, when you're like, if you're going for a big tackle in football, immediately you get up and you're like, what you doing, type of thing. Like, because you're like there with them straight away. In Formula 1, you're not. You're in a car. You're surrounded by carbon fibre. You can't just stop the race, get out and whack him one. You've got to take off his race suit and everything. Like, not his race suit. That'd be a bit weird. It's crash helmet and obviously give him a good thumping, but obviously you can't do that. You've got to wait till the end. Now, we have seen similar incidents where drivers have gone up to other races and clapped with them in. Like, obviously, famously, Nelson Piquet. I think Nelson Piquet did it when he got out of his car and started giving him, the other driver, I can't remember his name, a good clap when he got taken out of the race. And obviously, most famously, Michael Schumacher, when he got taken out of the race by David Coulthard back in Belgium 1998.
Oh, yes.
Obviously, you can see him storming out of his car, taking off his earplugs, going to the garage, the McLaren garage, and giving him a piece of his mind.
Which was a ballsy thing, man. I mean, that was pretty. That was a big move, because he went into the garage. I mean, it's like there was a video. There was a video of there was a player from the New Orleans Saints in NFL, and he went over to the sidelines to argue with the other team. I forgot who. I think it might have been Kansas City, and he went to argue with them. And obviously, you think, I mean, one guy going against like 50, massive people from that other team. Like, you think, what are they doing? And that's happened in that race as well. But yeah, that was absolutely crazy. That I remember that.
It was crazy. I'm surprised David Coulthard didn't get his chin out and start never mind. Sorry, David Coulthard. I like you really. So obviously that aggression there. But if you look at other situations, like one I'm going to bring up now is the one that we've already mentioned about the Daniel Kvyat, Sebastian Vettel situation. Vettel got taken out by Kvyat twice in 2 races. Immediately you're gonna think he's gonna blow his lid. But obviously, you've seen the conversation in the pre-podium celebrations where he's like, "Well, that's just racing." He's like, "Well, yeah, it's racing, and you came in like a torpedo type of thing."
That's it.
You know what I mean? Like having that conversation. Like Vettel didn't go up to Red Bull and give him a piece of his mind. He remained calm. He remained professional, and he just did what he had to do. Verstappen went on it. He just went on it ridiculous, right? And apparently, what caused Verstappen to push Ocon was the fact of his smile. Apparently he smirked, and Verstappen obviously got annoyed and started pushing him. And I'm like, there is no need to be able to pushing other drivers around like that. And then as I was saying to this guy that I was talking about, I was saying that like they are role models in the sense of like for other upcoming drivers and fans themselves. They don't want to be seeing drivers pushing other drivers around. Would you say that from Hamilton? You wouldn't. Vettel, Raikkonen, Bottas. If that had happened to any of them, you wouldn't see that from them. Verstappen, you can tell how unexperienced Verstappen is, and I hope that this is a learning curve for Verstappen. That I don't say anything like this again, not only from him but from other drivers as well, because Formula One is such a unique sport in itself. That you don't see violence, you don't see aggression, you don't see anything like you do in football, where there's violence and riots and people giving each other fist fights and everything like. You don't. It's very, very rare to see it in Formula One, and when I see it, I'm just like, right, you're just damaging the reputation of our sport, and the sport at the moment needs a good reputation as it ever does, because Formula E is on the rise at the moment, guys. Obviously, for next season, it's going to be probably its biggest season ever. So we need to keep the sport of Formula One alive. Keep it good, keep the fans coming over to watch Formula 1 rather than Formula E. And if drivers are going to be doing that, then they're going to be like, well, I don't see that in Formula E, so I'm going to go and watch Formula E instead. We don't want that. So Verstappen, if that does happen again, just please think twice. I mean, it was ridiculous. Obviously, Ocon didn't react. He responded very, very well. I was watching an interview that I think he did with, is it Ziggo Sport? That's a Dutch media firm, which is basically saying that he apologised to the Dutch fans. Like, sorry. Again, obviously, the Dutch media were on his case straight away, which I thought was a bit harsh. Bearing in mind that like it wasn't just Ocon, it was Verstappen as well. However, obviously straight away on his mind, he just kind of said, well, this is how it is, that's how it was. His aggression was a bit childish, which it was, I agree. As I said, I'm a big fan of Verstappen, so is Lyle. I've been for quite some time since he did come to Formula 1. But I don't like this side of Verstappen. He needs to have a calm mode on, just go right. Obviously, just go into the scene. It's a bit like what Verstappen, I keep saying bloody Verstappen, Vettel and Webber did at Multi-21. They went in the room, talked it out, and that was done. It was left to us just to kind of debate as to what was said, what happened.
You thought it was over
kind
anyway.
Of like,
you think exactly. It was over, yeah.
Well, yeah, I'd imagine that they give each other a piece of their mind, but obviously they went into China.
That could have led to Mark Webber's retirement. That could have led to that. Most likely did as well.
I think Webber's retirement was probably when he knew that he couldn't beat.
Or he couldn't work with them. I mean, remember when Alain Prost said he can't at McLaren? He said he can't work with Ayrton. He said it's becoming physically impossible to work with Ayrton. I don't think it was that. Yeah, I don't think it was that. Yeah, I don't think it was too bad. I don't think it was that bad for Webber to say I can't work with Vettel. But he's crashed with him in Turkey, crashed with him at like Silver. Well, there was that front wing debate at Silverstone. Crashed with Multi-21. Yeah, he couldn't work with him. I don't think it was as bad as Senna and Prost, but he couldn't work with him, and that led to his retirement. But yeah, you've got to. Handle it mature. And what I was going to say, Jordan, about when you were mentioning like Esteban and his smile, obviously he wasn't trying to, he wasn't trying to wind him up. I don't think Esteban would have been Esteban would have been a bit angry. He'll have been, what the hell are you doing, pushing us? I want to, push you back. But I find it, but actually, do you know what? I think Esteban's probably laughing because, well, one, he thinks it's a bit pathetic.
Yeah.
But then two is when you were saying about Danny Fiat and Sebastian Vettel. If you remember Danny Fiat, he was like smiling at me. He was like, "Oh well, it's racing. I'd go for that gap." And he was like not finding the funny part of it. But Daniel was like seeing seeing the lighter side of it. Like he's seeing the lighter side of it. And Sebastian, as I say, was just talking it through. I think that Esteban was doing that. He was trying to make a bit of a joke out of it. Obviously, I know it was annoying for Verstappen. He's lost 7 points. But he was trying to make a bit of a joke out of it, make it a bit lighthearted, because, again, Esteban's mature. He's not all... Verstappen's older than Ocon. And Ocon's actually more mature than Verstappen as well. He's been in Formula 1 less time, and he's still mature than Verstappen. I think Esteban was trying to just make a light situation about it, but then also, I think as soon as he was pushed, like when he was pushed off the scales, the dreaded scales, they were mentioned.
Scales again.
I hope Sebastian Vettel doesn't. Actually, that guy, Esteban, was like, "Don't tell Sebastian we're here." Oh, he could ruin them. But no. When Esteban was pushed off the scales, Jordan, he probably then thought, right, okay, this is kind of hilarious. This is kind of like pathetic by Max. You're making a fool of yourself, and of course, there's no cameras in the the weighing part. But of course, somebody caught it on their camera. It was a bit of a shaky, landscape portrait camera view. Obviously, nobody vlogs in portrait. You know what I mean? And obviously, it's now that clip is now all over social media, and that obviously we're going to talk about for weeks and months and years. And that's probably going to haunt Verstappen and more Verstappen for ages. And the thing is, getting the incident, even if it was 110% Ocon's fault, that. The way that Verstappen went on in that scales room, John, is just not acceptable. So even if this incident was 110% Esteban Ocon's fault, even if he was all to blame and Max wasn't to blame, I still think that after what had happened with in the scales room, I do still think that we would look at it and we'll think, right, okay, well, it's a racing incident, but I don't care anymore. It comes down to how Max, handled himself. He wasn't mature. He pushed Esteban. He made a fool of himself, it was captured on telly. There's no cameras in there, but somebody did get it on the phone. It was on a portrait view, so kind of like a rushed. He opened it, realised what was going on. There was angry faces and memes made out of it. And it's obviously being now shared all over Facebook, and it's made it's going to be on like the Abu Dhabi build-up shows, obviously, because it's a big topic. It's just how Max handled himself. He wasn't mature, and I'll say it's put a damper. It's put a real difference on the event, because now, as I say, even if it all was Esteban's fault, even if Esteban was Max was not to blame, we would then still look at it and think, well, Max is he's kind of ruined a little bit of his reputation, just a little bit of it. Obviously, when you were saying about Formula E, Jordan, I don't think that people will turn off Formula 1 because of that. Drivers can still be immature. I don't mean immature, but I mean, obviously, of course, there'll be still people like that will go the next step further. Like when you're saying about fights on field, obviously in rugby, there's always people, like there'll be some people who will just want to fight, not want to fight, but obviously there's someone like to be a high tackle, start a fight, start an argument, start a disagreement. It's the heat of the moment, adrenaline, so things like that. I always remember one of the most famous ones, obviously, when I went to the 2014 Super League Grand Final, obviously St Helens versus Wigan in rugby league. Ben Flower got sent off 2 minutes in because he punched one of the St Helens players. Obviously that's happened before in other rugby union games, rugby league games, especially rugby, because obviously that's the adrenaline's just going like mad, after Jordan saying about titles and that. But so I don't think that's going to work. Formula 1 is still a high tempo kind of race. They're all fired up and that. No fight should go on. Should conduct himself like Sebastian Vettel, like you said. Max's behaviour not acceptable. He was then ultimately punished for his actions. Now he was given something that we've never seen before. We've never seen in a very long time. I don't think we've ever seen it. It was like community service for the FIA. So as much as the statement came out is that he hasn't been fined. He basically has to serve 2 days working with the FIA. And obviously, we're not going to get into too much detail about that, because I think it's odd. It's an odd thing. I shared it on the page and I was like, I've seen it all now. Like, this is not something you see every day. That was very strange. Yeah, exactly. It was odd. It was very strange. But anyway, so obviously Max has to do that. Don't get that. That will probably be done under closed doors. I don't want to talk about too much about that, because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if that's going to be picking up litter or fixing the scales. That's Sebastian Vettel broke scales. There we go again. Mention them scales. I don't know, doing the judging on the Abu Dhabi FP1. I didn't know that punishment existed. Esteban's not racing then. So we don't really know what's going to happen there. Yeah. But yeah, Max Verstappen has been punished. It's not a fine, but really, the damage is already done for Max, and it's not from what the FIA gave him. The damage is done obviously from what he did on with Esteban Ocon in the paddock, pushing off the scales, basically making a fool of himself. Esteban didn't, like John said, he basically acted maturely. He called him a word which is another word for a cat or a willow in the press conference. Obviously Lewis Hamilton and Kimi Raikkonen both laughed when he said that. Basically made a bit of a fool of himself. he slagged him off to the media and French media and things like that when Esteban was still apologised. Esteban didn't have anything bad to say about Max. Max has now come around a little bit, and he shook hands with him in the paddock just before they were leaving. But Jordan, you know when you're at school and you fight with somebody, obviously I know you have a lot of experience with that, when I'm joking obviously, and you have to shake hands with somebody because the teacher made you, you know, shake hands with him now, you know, you're not having any cake, and you have to shake hands with him like, oh fine, here we go then, oh god, like that. It really was like that just happened in the paddock as they were walking back, and I think he also got like a little bit of a clap. I'm not imagining that. I'm sure somebody behind them gave them a little clap when that happened, like, well done, you're friends again, oh my god. But Jordan, Max's damage is already done. It really is. So obviously, two questions I've got for you. Firstly, Max's behaviour. Has he done more damage than the FIA has to him? Well, the FIA really hasn't done any damage. Has he acted immaturely? And has he almost scrapped this racing incident, or put it separately and said, right, okay, I've pushed him and that's a separate incident where I've acted immature and Esteban hasn't? And the second thing is that has it damaged his reputation going forward? Because now we look at Max and say he's 21, he is, he's still a young gun Formula that could be world champion, but he's very immature, like what happened in Brazil. Has he damaged his reputation by this event?
I think he has, just a little bit, especially with myself, because we know, like, when Verstappen first came into the sport, he was obviously young, fresh. There was a lot of hype around him. When you look back at it now, it's probably a bit too much hype because he hasn't actually, fulfilled or lived up to his expectations as of yet. Yes, I know that the car hasn't been good, but Verstappen seems to be slow at the start and good at the end. He's done that 3 seasons in a row now with Red Bull. Really bad, I wouldn't say bad at the start, but slow to get off the starting blocks. And at the end, when the checker flag's about to fall, he's just formidable. Like, he's the highest scoring driver out of the last 6 races. You know what I mean? Like, he wins podiums, like, and everyone goes, oh, next season is going to be this year. Like we said last season. However, the start of this season was just absolutely abysmal. Like, we're seeing the spin at Turn 1 in Australia. You know what I mean? Like, all these problems, obviously the contact with Sebastian Vettel of all people as well. I remember that contact back in China. Obviously nothing happened to that. There was no aggression from either drivers. There was just a couple of swear words and it was just all done. You know what I mean? Like, obviously Vettel was just like, well, okay, that's how it goes. I'm not going to do anything about that. Because obviously Vettel at the time was obviously just recovering from what a poor end of what 2017 was. So obviously he didn't have any time to be aggressive. So I mean, yes, it has. I wouldn't say massively, but a little bit where if you go to overtake Max Verstappen, it's going to be you're probably going to get crashed. You're probably going to get taken out of the race. Like when back in the day when Schumacher would win, and then it would be like, oh, Schumacher's won and Hill has finished second again. Like, oh, just how typical. Like, oh, Barrichello, he hasn't won the race. He's come second again. Like, he's going to have that damage, that reputation. Like, oh, Verstappen has crashed. Again, you don't want that. It's like when Hamilton retires. Hamilton's retired. Like, whoa! Like, this is so unheard of. Like, this is going to be a good race now. That's what we want from Max Verstappen instead of Verstappen's retired. Oh. They've still got Ricardo. Everything's looking forward. Or Pierre Gasly next season. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. So I just hope that doesn't have the case. I hope Verstappen does live up to his expectation of being a world champion, being a legendary driver. But I do think that this is just kind of that career starting block kind of blip, and then hopefully as you move on further on into his career, should he stay in Formula 1 for a bit longer, then I'm sure that you could say, okay, he has matured across the ages, but if he keeps up this aggressiveness, this the lack of concentration, you know what I mean, like all these swear words, obviously pushing drivers, and if he's still doing this by the age of, let's say, 26, 27, no team's going to want him, because you're gonna want the big sponsors, aren't you, coming into your team? Like, obviously they've got like Tag Heuer, obviously Aston Martin, one of the big names there. Johnny Walker as well. So obviously you've got like low, and obviously Honda next season as well. Honda will bring their sponsors, so will Gasly. So there's a lot of expectation riding on Red Bull to be able to get back to the top. And if Verstappen's going to be doing this, being too aggressive to these drivers, and obviously the media or whoever to the officials, then it's just not going to work. Red Bull are going to go, well, we want a driver who smiles in front of the cameras and is good towards the people, because the sponsors are going to be on Matish's case, they're going to be on Helmut Marko's case, they're going to be on a lot of people's cases if drivers and other people are going to be, too aggressive towards drivers. There's going to be too much pressure. Well, they'll go, okay, well, if your driver's going to be, like this, we're just going to pull out a Formula 1 because it's given our company a bad name. Like, oh look, there's Coca-Cola. Oh, the car that always retires. You're not going to want that there. I'll have a Red Bull instead. Like Coca-Cola's like, you're kidding us, right? You know what I mean? So I would say it's damaged a little bit. It's dented it, but one thing I do know that you can repair dents. Dents are repairable. It doesn't look the same, but it's better than what it was before. That's what I will say about Max.
You can work on it, yeah.
Yes,
you get the best out of what you can, but I'll tell you something, John. Just one quickly. He is definitely he's the leader of the team next year. He needs to really become mature and
easily. He's the number one driver.
It's kind of strange. We're not really talking about Formula 1 now. It's kind of like a job aspect. Like what's the best kind of person? And Max is the leader of the team next year. He's also had a big team. It's not the way that you go on. At the end of the day, remember, these drivers are just employees. They're not like superstars. They are employees. Exactly. At the end of the day, Lewis Hamilton is an employee of Mercedes, like you or I or anyone else. But obviously, he's on like a six-figure salary. And Max has just got a kind of
a week.
I mean, at the end of the day, Jordan, I believe that people will dismiss it very soon. Like, for example, obviously Abu Dhabi needs to keep his head down. Again, a bit like if you've been in trouble at work, you need to just keep your head down. I think Abu Dhabi needs to keep his head down and just drive. No, nothing from
easily.
him. No,
win the race. That'll be good.
Yeah.
I think a bit like when Ricciardo won Monaco. That 2016 was forgotten about. It was forgotten.
I agree.
It's all done. It's been resolved. So if he wins the race, or let's say he comes to Brazil next year and wins it, then okay. Redemption done.
Or at least Abu Dhabi at the end of this season. But think of Jordan as well. After he wins, very little drama, or is no drama that he can help it, but then also just don't kick off. And also then apologise for what you've done, a bit like Sebastian Vettel did, obviously with Multi-21. Just kind of, it's not the way that driver should go on, but in Abu Dhabi I think it'll all be settled. I think that Max, as long as he does a good drive, keeps his head down, I think it'll all be settled, John. I think that this was just as you said, a long time ago, you said about the rugby and adrenaline. It's just an adrenaline thing. He got out of the car. Remember the podium? Lewis and Kimi didn't agree with him. He couldn't kick off on the radio. He probably thought people were taking Esteban's side. He thought he'd lost 7 points from the race win. All of that were bubbling up inside of his head, and he needed to kick off at somebody. He couldn't kick off at himself. He needed to kick off at somebody, and that somebody was a 6'3" Frenchman in a pink suit who just got out of his car, who he tangled with. So it's like, who can I kick off at? Oh, I'll kick off at him, the big pink guy.
Who Esteban Ocon? Obviously, he's been bullied by the drivers and bullied by Verstappen, and he's got no seat for next season. I wouldn't want to be Esteban Ocon right now, but obviously this is where we're going to wrap up this episode. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a long but very good episode, a big debatable episode, I must say. Probably one of my favourite episodes I've actually done this week as well. Loads of points. Hope you guys agreed as well. Obviously, leave your comments and your opinions as well in the comment section below. Anything that we're talking about. Do you think Esteban Ocon's fault, Verstappen's fault, both? The future of Verstappen, has damaged his reputation. Ocon as well, what was he like as well? Obviously the future of Esteban Ocon. Obviously, let us know your opinions. Let us know your opinions on that. But obviously, if you have liked what you're seeing, please like this video as well. Subscribe if you're new to the F1 Debate Show as well. Obviously, we do this every single week. Share your videos with your friends. If you've got any, if you like Lyle and you haven't got any, then don't bother. Keep on watching. Anything you want to talk about, anything you want us to actually debate about that you want opinions on, then obviously just let us know in the comment section below. Go and like us on Facebook as well if you haven't already. Follow us on Twitter at F1. What's that?
It's underneath here. We're all underneath.
Oh yeah, it is. Oh yeah. I totally forgot about that. Yes, it is. It's underneath us, of course. So go and like us on all our social medias as well. Obviously, thank you very much for watching, guys. And until the next episode, we'll see you later.
See you in Abu Dhabi, the last round.
It is! Oh, don't remind me. Oh.